Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're here yet again with the Acolyte Episode 5 review. This episode is entitled Night. I'm joined here yet again with the Archivist. Thanks again for joining, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So, let's just get this out of the way first. There's going to be spoilers in this video for Episode 5 of the Acolyte. If you haven't seen it yet and you have any interest whatsoever, don't watch this video. Go watch it. I don't think that if you're on the fence, you need to go see the Acolyte personally at this point. I've been seeing a lot in the comments. People are saying, I just enjoy watching the reviews of people talk about the Acolyte. That way I don't have to go and, invest and waste a lot of time, even though you're not wasting all that much time with these 20-minute episodes, 25, 28-minute episodes.
Oh, man.
Which comes out to, like, if the budget of the Acolyte was $180 million, if we're getting these 30-minute episodes and the budget of that is like roughly $30 million an episode, so roughly, again, $1 million a minute, what we're seeing on screen, like, that's absurd. Anyway.
Yeah.
Let's get into Episode 5. I didn't like Episode 5,
No, you didn't.
I think that there's, like, things going on in the episode, but are those things that are going on all that quality? Are they deserved? And then more importantly, what do they have to do and relate to the lore? Now, anyone that watches the channel or even has had a conversation with me knows Star Wars is by far my favorite franchise, and the Sith are by far my favorite aspect of my favorite franchise. So hearing about the Acolyte, I was super excited. Getting to explore what the Sith are up to around 100 years before the events of the Phantom Menace. Obviously, all the story details that we were getting of the Acolyte early that weren't, more casting or, just the plot itself sounded awesome. It sounded epic. But obviously, it's all about execution. So this episode for me continues to be a mixed bag. I think that it is absolutely atrocious when you look at this from a lore perspective, and I think that the writing is borderline disrespectful if Disney wants us to continue to consume their Star Wars canon, but then they're having these shows where none of that stuff really matters. So which is it, truthfully? Are we expected to consume all of these little pieces of lore to try and build the greater universe and greater story because we threw out legends, or does none of that matter at all anymore? That's my big question. So the big issue I have with Episode 5 of The Acolyte is it's all about the Sith. So what do we know about the Sith in canon, and how does The Acolyte sort of break from that? Well, as opposed to Legends continuity, in canon, it is confirmed that the Sith ruled the galaxy at some point in time for presumably hundreds of years. If you're familiar with Legends continuity, the Sith Empire will rise typically in the unknown regions or the Sith corners of space. They rise to power, then they go to war with the Jedi and the Republic, and they have these big conflicts. But the Sith never win in the lore. They, in Legends, do not conquer the galaxy until Sidious. But in canon, that's not the case. In canon, the Sith have ruled the galaxy for hundreds of years and were this massive threat that sort of caused the Jedi and the Republic to become as prevalent and as powerful as they were. They were the answer to this massive Sith threat, these galactic overlords before the time of Palpatine. And in canon, it's sort of Palpatine reclaiming that crown, where in Legends, it was never his crown to begin with, and he's sort of the first person to truly conquer it. With all of that said, when you give us a show and the Jedi characters don't know what a Sith is, they're not loyal to the lore in terms of the Sith haven't been around for generations at this point. When Master Soul is still alive, and as you put off recording, if Master Soul doesn't reach out to the Council or another Jedi immediately and say that the Sith have returned, this is a massive mistake. It also bugged me a great deal that the Sith apprentice, which I believe he's the apprentice, I think that's even implied in the episode, for the Sith apprentice to come out and straight up say to a Jedi, "You would call me a Sith," absolutely betrays the fundamental idea behind the rule of two. If Darth Bane from Legends continuity heard that, he would have a stroke. It's just not written with the lore in mind. And is that a bad thing? With Star Wars, it's absolutely a bad thing, especially if, Disney wants us to continue to consume all this content while at the same time being, well, none of that matters. Kiadi Mundi last week was just dipping your toe in the water, but now we're talking about universe-altering events with the Sith. No Sith apprentice would ever come out and say to a Jedi Master 100 years before, Palpatine's ascension that he's a Sith. The whole point of the Rule of Two is that they don't do that anymore. The whole point is that they transform and become something different. They become politicians, bankers, scientists, etc. So if one of them were to come out to a Jedi of all people, first of all, a Sith Lord would never say that to anybody besides another Sith Lord, even likely an Acolyte. But the fact that they said that to a Jedi Master's face makes absolutely no sense. I also want to say, and this could be jumping the gun a lot, but I think that the setup here is that Mother Coriel is going to be Darth Plagueis, which absolutely drives me crazy for so many reasons. But they mentioned here that Chimere, the Sith Apprentice, Smilo Ren, Darth Teeth, whatever you want to call him, has the ability to penetrate Jedi's minds in a way that they directly correlate to the Witches of Brendok from the previous episodes, which means that Chimere, the Sith Apprentice, learned it from someone. There's at this point only one mother or Witch of Brendok unaccounted for, and that's Master Coriel, who, of course, we saw in the previous episodes, who I believe is either full Zabrak or half Zabrak. Doesn't really matter. Anyway, she can create life with Osha and with May, and now she's potentially a Sith Lord, and Chimere has potentially learned secrets under her. If they turn that into Plagueis, I think that legitimately takes out maybe the best piece of Star Wars novels ever in the Darth Plagueis novelization. Maybe the single best Star Wars novel of all time. I think that there's a debate there for the Revenge of the Sith novelization and maybe the Bane trilogy. But if somebody put a lightsaber to my head, just like happens in The Acolyte, I would say that the Darth Plagueis novel is the best Star Wars novel. So for them to take that beautiful source material and to change it into something else, something so much less meaningless, is damaging to the brand. A brand that's already having, that they're already suffering with damage and losses. It's just so sad to see, especially because Dave Filoni with the Ahsoka series had a quote that I absolutely fell in love with and that I openly praised on the channel when he said, if there's a piece of Star Wars Legends continuity that we think is really good, we like to find a way to integrate that into Star Wars canon. That way it all feels like one big, beautiful, connected universe. And I absolutely loved that he said that, because it made me feel deep inside that all these stories that I've loved for so long actually still had relevancy and still meant something. The Acolyte has thrown that statement and all of the books and all of the importance of Legends continuity away completely. And it just is so frustrating. There's good things in this episode, but overall the impact that it has on the story and the brand of Star Wars, it's been an overarching negative experience for me personally as a Star Wars, mega fan, if you will. I love the Sith, and the Acolyte has just been so disappointing on that front. And if it does what I think it's going to do, they're into full-on offensive territory in my mind. Anyway, man, I just ranted for like 10 minutes. What did you think of the episode?
Dadgum. Man, you pretty much said a lot of what I think we're all thinking right now, as far as, offensive is the word that a lot of people are using right now. And I know I gave a scathing review last week on the episode. This week I was actually pacified a lot more. This was one of those episodes where a lot of stuff is on screen, but not a lot actually happens. Do you get what I mean? Like,
yeah,
things happen in the episode, but as far as the actual narrative's progression, it took exactly one step forward. Like, characters got from one place to another place, but not a really far place, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think someone that doesn't have a strong connection to Legends or the other stories can watch this episode and come out and be like, this is really good. There was a lot of action. There was a lot of decent action. The choreography was good. Yeah. And, you know, it could be very brutal at times, which is something that I've liked in Star Wars. And it's refreshing here to see the Sith actually be as brutal as I think that they should be. With Chimere and Darth Teeth. And I should also say that I like this Sith apprentice and I like the way he fights. But at the end of the day, is that enough to save this series? And for me, man, it's just not.
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean. Again, I think it was because I was so starved for some good lightsaber, Jedi on Sith action that I was a lot more pacified watching this. I got to see some Jedi get laid out by the Sith, who actually is a very competent combatant, at least until he starts fighting some of the main characters. But he really struggles with Jeki, who just kind of goes Super Saiyan on him for a little bit until he has to pull out a gimmick from his lightsaber to finish her off. But what I was really interested that they decided to do was they have him wearing Cortosis armor. Like throughout the episode, he's got like these armbands, and his helmet is made of Cortosis, which, if you don't know, is lightsaber resistant, and it will actually, unlike Beskar, which just absorbs the blow and the heat entirely, Cortosis will actually short out lightsaber blades temporarily whenever a blade hits the metal. And that was happening throughout the episode, which I think was really cool to see. I think this, if I'm right, this is the first time we've actually seen Cortosis in canon. It's a very prevalent metal in Legends, particularly made famous in, I think, the Vader Purge comic.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, they at least keep it accurate to, the metal itself is actually pretty brittle. As his mask gets beaten off his face, it cracks because, it's a brittle metal, which is one of those things where I'm scratching my chin. I'm like, okay, so you guys are doing a really good job at things like the Barash Vow and introducing Cortosis. Like, I can immediately recognize Cortosis without you having to overtly name drop what it is and how it works, which means you have a working knowledge of these smaller things, or at least somebody on the writing team does. So what's going on with everything else?
Yeah. I think that Cortosis was briefly mentioned in a Star Wars novel a few years ago, but this is the first on-screen canon time we're seeing it. Yeah, but you bring up a great point. Why are these pieces of lore are awesome? Stuff like the Barash Vow, stuff like Cortosis, even Chimere talking about, I have this power, but the Jedi won't allow me to use it in a way that I want to. That's all stuff that comes from Palpatine in Legends continuity, by the way, where he says stuff like, I don't like the Jedi because they all have the ability to rule and yet decide not to. And I believe that if a Jedi or an individual has this great power gifted to them by the universe, by the Force itself, they should be able to wield it as they see fit. They should immediately be placed societally above everybody else. And Chimere illustrates that. He says that he wants to use the power. He refers to the Jedi as lesser beings when after he kills Jeki, he's like that, or Jeki or whatever, however you say it. He says, that's what you call it. I like stuff like that. I like when the Sith elevate themselves above the Jedi. And obviously a lot of Jedi died. A lot of characters that we thought were going to be main characters died in this episode. But at the end of the day...
Yord got his neck broken.
Yeah, and I like that stuff. Like, obviously, I said in the last episode I was starting to like Yord. I think that Yord doesn't act like a Jedi. I don't think Jeki acts like a Jedi either, which bugs me a lot, by the way. Now that we're getting into that, we've transitioned into another rant. When Yord is telling Osha that he's going to subdue her unless she does exactly what he says, that doesn't feel like a Jedi thing to say. Also,
I didn't even think about that.
It's been said that Yord follows things by the book. And subduing a civilian doesn't really seem like a by-the-book Jedi thing to do. And then I said to myself mentally, okay, maybe he's stressed. Obviously, he's had a Sith Lord enter his mind, or a Sith apprentice enter his mind, and he's deeply disturbed, so he's shaken. He doesn't know what they are. But then immediately after that, we go to Jecki, and the first thing Jecki does to May is, it's not a conversation. She just jumps out of nowhere and starts attacking May, trying to put her in handcuffs, and on top of all of that, she's belittling her and berating her essentially for all these people that Jecki thinks that she's killed. And in my mind, that's not a thing a Jedi would do at all. I mean, look at Luke and Vader. Luke is looking at a man who is responsible for the deaths of millions upon millions of people. But his reaction isn't to insult him. His reaction is to be like, you know, people make mistakes, people can be redeemed. I haven't lost faith in you. So when you have this Jedi who I don't think has ever met this other person, am I incorrect on that? I don't think they've ever met. So for Jecki's first reaction to belittle and to escalate this situation just feels like something a Jedi would not do. And I get the whole thing like, oh, she's a Padawan, oh, she's learning, but I still don't think that would be what a Jedi would do, man. Like, that stuff like that bugs me.
And, you know, there's, of course, like her screaming and snarling at the Sith Master as she's just relentlessly attacking him, too.
That stuff I don't so much mind because she's watched a lot of her Jedi friends get struck down very quickly. Also, I was super disappointed that we followed Osha's point of view at the beginning of the episode, and we didn't get to see a large swaths of this duel that has been so built up. And for creatives that are saying stuff like, we're going to make a duel better than the Phantom Menace, we don't have that much left in the Acolyte. They better pull something crazy out quick, because if they think that these duels are anywhere close to as good as what the Phantom Menace Duel of Fates is, they are sorely mistaken. The Phantom Menace duel has so much tension and so much, you know, there's so much at stake there. It is the Duel of Fates. You can really feel the fear of the young Obi-Wan and the calm but focused Qui-Gon, and then the Sith assassin who clearly has more tricks up his sleeve than the Jedi are prepared for, and they know that. So there's actually a lot of similarities between that duel in the Phantom Menace and these duels in the Acolyte. You know, I think that this is another apprentice. Sith apprentice. And I like, by the way, that the Sith apprentice is more powerful than the Jedi. But a lot of that tension is just getting cut off when we're switching to the other characters right when, you know, the main stakes start. Right when the duel starts with Chimere, Soul, and Jecki. It's like we instantly switch to Osha, and it's just a tension killer.
It is. It really is. Like, the momentum is stopped dead. You look at other lightsaber duels in Star Wars, and a lot of the time, like, okay, yeah, sometimes the duel is intercut with other events happening, but we still at least focus on the duel for a hot minute. Like, it's usually the main event. And in this one, I was actually frustrated whenever you would have characters like Master Soul. I forgot exactly what happened, but he drops like a really cool line before rushing into attack again, and then it cuts away to Osha or May, you know, doing whatever, and I'm like, no, like, bring us back to where we care about. Honestly, as soon as all the action with the Sith and the Jedi stopped, and it was just May and Osha meeting everything, I was completely taken out of the episode, and I was just kind of suddenly reminded why I really don't care about this show, because I really don't care about the main characters whatsoever. You know, I care about the overarching conflict between the Jedi and Sith. And the minute that that's shown, I'm entertained. But when it's taken away, I'm like, nah, man, this is not it.
Yeah. I'm just disappointed. And I don't get the message that they're trying to send out. I mean, you get something like Ahsoka that pulls from legends and pulls from deeper parts of canon, and they really make a big deal out of it. And then it's like you get the Acolyte and they tell you the opposite. They tell you, we're writing our show. These stories that we're selling to you don't matter. Because again, At this point, they're not even just throwing away legend stories. Now they're throwing away their own stories, which, we spend money on books and comics. So it's confusing. Do they want us to indulge in that and to flesh out this universe, or are all the things coming out just that's the main thing and everything else is secondary? Especially when I find that writing around the things that they have established in canon to be so easy. I found myself asking in this episode, what does this Sith apprentice gain by revealing himself to all of these Jedi? Truthfully, what does he gain? Why is he risking the entire lineage of presumably the Rule of Two if he does turn out to be a Sith Lord? Like I said, giving Bane a heart attack in the afterlife. Why is he doing this to gain absolutely nothing? In Legends, when the Sith come close to revealing themselves accidentally to the Jedi, it's not just a big deal for a few minutes or 30 minutes. It's a big deal for decades. And I'm just confused. It's purposefully holding back where these characters stand. These characters don't really act in a consistent way. That's been a huge criticism of the series. So what is going on? And, Master Soul has a line of, the darkness has clouded Kymir's mind, and that is why he's attacking, and his plan, I guess, makes no sense if he even has a plan. It's just frustrating.
Oh, yeah, man. Assuming that Kymir is the Sith Master, I was literally saying this out loud on my couch whenever Soul brings his blade right to the man's neck. I was like, the Sith is about to, this whole Sith lineage is about to go down the drain right here.
Yeah.
If Osha hadn't spoken up, Master Soul would have taken care of all the problems we would have had with Palpatine in the future. Like, the entire Empire could have been avoided if he's the Master. Which
I don't think he is. But the line that he has later of, like, no one can see my face or something akin to that. I only watched it once.
Yeah.
That had me almost shouting at the screen, like, why does that matter? Like, your face doesn't matter. What matters is that you're a Sith, which, by the way, you said, man. You said that you were a Sith. They said if you were going to call me anything, it would be Sith. Before I could get it in my head, he's a dark Jedi, or even he's another Acolyte. He's another dark side Force wielder. But he's come out and he said the word Sith. No one else did. He said the word Sith. So for someone who's so focused on staying hiding, he's not doing it at all.
Oh my. Yeah, I was so confused, man. I was like, why? Why would you purposely... I know this is kind of circling back to exactly what you said around the beginning. You were like, what's the point in revealing yourself? No Rule of Two Sith would ever do this. And I thought that back last week. I was like, why kill Tyvaka? Why reveal yourself to the Jedi? May doesn't know anything, so killing her or letting her be captured, neither one has any consequence because she's never seen your face, and she doesn't know anything. She does know about the Sith, so I guess there's that reason to kill her. But, oh well, I guess, if she doesn't have to tell the Jedi if you're going to.
Yeah. Man, I just think that this is sad, and it's frustrating because there's good choreography here, and the makeup is good.
Yeah.
And the duels are better than they have been. I'm not going to say they're great.
That's true.
But there is good here. And it's just especially frustrating because a lot of the bad here, in my mind, is just so easily avoidable. And yet, it's just not. It's just not cared for. This show's not about the Sith, man. I think that's one of the big things. Is like, we're 5 episodes in, and now we're just barely getting into it. And that's disappointing on its own. But when you get into the story about the Sith, and now you're ripping apart lore, and, the Ki-Adi-Mundi thing is one thing. But for people that really know their legend stuff and really care about Sith Star Wars Legends material, this is going to be so much worse. And it's unfortunate because there's clearly potential here. There's clearly potential with, some of these characters who are interesting and the way they fight and their relationships with one another and the time period that they're in. But the parts of the Acolyte that are so interesting to me, being the time period and the Sith, are just parts of the story that they're not focusing on at all. The story is all about Osha and May, and their story is falling completely flat to me. It is just not working. And I mean, we saw Soul at the end leave with May. I guess May is now impersonating Osha, which is the next big thing. And I think it's going to...
Yeah, how does he not sense that?
I mean, maybe they're similar enough that... Yeah, I mean...
Except she's been steeped in the dark side for the past 10 years.
Yeah, and she hasn't really learned tricks of how to conceal her dark side. I'm actually going to come out in defense of the Acolyte for one little thing. A lot of people, I've been seeing criticisms that the Jedi don't sense the Sith, when in reality the Sith obviously learned during this time period how to conceal themselves using the Force, how to hide their Force signature. Palpatine's famous for that. But at the same time, Master Soul should be able to tell that this is May and not Osha. Like, as you pointed out, she's been seeped in the dark side for years at this point. And the fact that he doesn't sense anything, even if he is hiding something, even if he's done something that's evil and unforgivable, which Kymir seems to know. Everybody seems to know that this guy's done something wrong except for the audience. Everybody's saying stuff to him like, oh, you have darker intentions here, or, you've learned to hide your dark side. But I haven't seen any indication of that. This is all just hindering off of a flashback we haven't seen that we haven't gotten over. There's no progression. I get it. The Jedi did something wrong. I get it. To some people, the Jedi are evil. But when is this going to move along? When are things going to happen? For an episode of a lot of flashy things happening on screen, remarkably little happened. I think 4 or 5 Jedi that never said anything before are dead. So what?
Couple of red shirts. Yeah.
Yeah, red shirts, the Star Trek thing. I saw that. That's funny. Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the writers know the difference.
I feel like this video is so different than anything I've ever done on the channel before. Because I just love the lore. I love Star Wars lore, and to just watch something that just doesn't seem to care or respect it is, frustrating. Especially when it's official, and whether we like it or not, this is Star Wars right now. That I think is the reality.
That's the part I think just that stings the most, is that whether we like it or not, there is nothing we can do. Like, this is canon right now.
Yeah. And there will be good stories in the future. I'm not of that opinion that Star Wars is completely ruined or that the brand is destroyed. I didn't like a lot of the sequel trilogy, but then people seem to so easily forget about The Mandalorian and a lot of the cool stuff that happened even in the book of Boba Fett. And I don't think Star Wars is dead by any means, but this right now, this is not it. And I stand by that. It's unfortunate because I hope that when the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte dropped, that I would slowly be able to gain a love and respect for the series, because I thought it started out, fairly slow, but fairly solid. If you go back and you watch my review about that, I'm very optimistic. But the reality is, I think, is that we're headed in the opposite direction, and we're headed downhill. And that just makes me really nervous about next week. This used to be like the highlight, sitting down and getting to see a brand new Star Wars show. That was just such an experience. And I find myself now, as someone that cares about the Legends lore, getting prepared to be disappointed every week. And that's the sign of a series that is not working for me. Now, obviously, my opinion is my own. If you're liking The Acolyte and you like this stuff, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that for me, not only is this not it, but it's just really turned out to be extremely disappointing, especially when their plot, and the plot synopsis is set in an exceptionally interesting, unexplored period of time, and an exceptionally interesting time period for the Sith. So those are my closing comments, man. I don't really have much else to say. What are sort of your closing thoughts for, I think this episode was titled Night?
I think the last thing I have to say is that imagine binging this, right? Think about everything we've seen up till this point in the order that we've seen it. And like, if we take a step back and realize that we only have 3 episodes left, the story literally feels like it just got started and it's literally right about to end. Because last week, either last week or the week before, I think it was last week, yeah, things changed so suddenly. Like, May completely switches sides, we think. And it's just like, the show just got started, and now half the character cast is dead, and May's switched allegiances. We already know who the Sith Lord is, and it's about to end. So it's just like, it was way too slow for the amount of time that we were given, and to make up for that, everything just sort of changed all at once. And then we have this episode, which was just kind of all action and no plot. Which, I mean, I like action just as much as the next guy. But, yeah, I don't know, man. 3 more episodes.
3 more episodes. All right, guys. Thank you so much for visiting the channel. We actually have some cool Sith lore coming out this week, if you're interested. We'll be talking about Sith apprentices. We'll also be talking a little bit more about some older Sith lore that I find really interesting. So if you guys are excited for that, stay tuned on the channel. We would love to hear what you guys think in the comments down below. Did you like the Acolyte episode? Where are we at? 5? Episode 5. How do you feel about the series overall? If you completely disagree with me, I have no problem with that. If you're enjoying it, I would love to hear why, and why you think maybe we should be approaching this from a different point of view. Or if you agree and you think that this is just really disappointing for Star Wars fans, I'd also love to hear your thoughts. But thank you again to the Archivist for joining and making time to share his thoughts today. And thank you guys
for having me, man.
Yeah, of course. And thank you guys for watching and giving us some of your time tonight. As always, my friends, may the Force be with you, and I will see you in another video.
Bye.